So the long story is that I used to be a paramedic in my 20s through the local hospitals here at St. Joe's and the University of Michigan. But I have major depressive disorder, ended up racking up a bunch of absentee days because of that, and was fired or let go because of those absentee days. When that happened, I became ashamed and embarrassed of my status as being dependent on other people, and I didn't want to be needy in the town that I grew up in around my friends and family who knew me. So I moved to Seattle with no grand plan other than to be dysfunctional somewhere where no one knew who I was. While I was out there, I had a chance to live inside of Tent City 3 and Tent City 4, and then I was hired on by the nonprofit to be their organizer. So I had a family emergency bring me back to Ann Arbor, and when I came back here, I took a look at the crashing economy, or with the articles about the crashing economy, and took a look at the shelter here, kind of with new eyes, because I'd never been homeless in Ann Arbor, and decided that there was an outside chance that I might be able to get a model like Seattle going here in Ann Arbor. So I decided that I would start by camping outside by myself and inviting people who don't have a place to stay to camp with me. The very first one is just a super small plot of land that's developed all around it. It's on Platte Road near Washtenaw, and I stayed there for a couple of months until it was obvious that people knew that we were there, and so I decided to make a preemptive move to a place not too far from there, probably less than a mile from there, and stayed there for a couple of months until the police found us. And then we moved to Arborland, and then from Arborland to Ann Arbor-Saline Road on the west side of the street, and then from the west side of Ann Arbor-Saline to the east side, and after that to our current location, Wagner Road. So I think that the reason sometimes you get a city response as the homeless community organizes is just has to do with visibility. So when you're not, the net number of homeless people may be the same whether you're organized or not, but when you start coming together, it becomes seeable to people passing by, and that's what triggers phone calls and fear, is the seeable nature of homelessness. Whereas when you encounter just an individual, a couple, a small group, you don't necessarily feel like the problem in your city is a weighty one. But seeing it in aggregate triggers a lot of people's anxiety. So what's kind of kept me going is knowing the history of Seattle's tent community. It's taken their first two tent cities, Tent City 1 and 2, were torn down, actually bulldozed by the city, and they continue to reform. And eventually, the larger community, in small pieces, started to accept their existence. So I would say the things that I attempt to do is encourage people to participate in the democratic process of ruling themselves. So as much as possible, I try to step away from the decision-making role and give that to the people within the community.
This is definitely a lot. I find this better than the shelter. At the shelter, you're required to leave the shelter at like 6:30 in the morning. You get up at 6. You have to get up at 6:30 in the morning, be gone by 7:30, and you have to take all your stuff with you for the entire day. And you can't, if you're a resident, you can't get back to your residential floor until 5. Actually, a much more prime example for someone who's actually out there trying to find work, trying to do something, because go to a job interview, you get up in the morning, do whatever you need to, change into dress clothes for your job interview, go to your job interview, and then you come back here and change so you're not dirtying those clothes for your interviews.
I want to start by first saying that an organized tent community often can only accommodate people that are socially appropriate, and many of us, I guess, have mental health issues of one kind or another, and substance abuse issues. There's a large population, that's a large percentage of homeless that don't necessarily do well or are able to remain long in an organized environment. So I feel like the shelter continues to be a prime place for the only place for some people to receive help. What I think the tent community does uniquely well is return people's sense of agency, and that's kind of a buzzword, but to break it down a little bit more, I think having lost power over the direction of your life, when you're in a tent community and you get take control of your own little square foot of space, your own tent, you have an area that is yours, and you have ways that you can interact in the community where your voice and your opinions have impact. And so that takes people from the position of being on the receiving end. Oftentimes in a shelter, you're just on the receiving end of help.